Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Purple Insider presented by FanDuel. Matthew Collar here, and returning to the show, Emily Leiker, Minnesota Vikings beat reporter for the Minnesota Star Tribune, and also a native of the Pacific Northwest, which has to be pretty interesting for you. Emily, you grew up as a Seattle Seahawks enjoyer, is that right?
Yes, I did grow up watching the Seahawks, enjoying the Seahawks. My discovery of like wanting to be a sports journalist coincided with their two Super Bowl appearances and like the Legion of Boom era and Marshawn Lynch and all that. So all of that is very nostalgic to me. And so it is interesting now, 12 years later to have them be back and now also have this tie of having covered Sam Darnold for part of last season and all of that. It makes for an enjoyable viewing experience. Having just kind of the background with them and then the background with Sam. And I'm excited. I'm interested for this Super Bowl rematch. Obviously did not end so well last time for the Seahawks against the Patriots in the Super Bowl.
Where do you remember like where you were watching when that happened, when Russell Wilson threw the interception at the goal line?
Yes. I remember like the silence in the room. I was at like a house party thrown by like my parents' friends. So it was like us and like a bunch of kids my age because I was like 13 at the time, I think. So yes, I was like sitting on a couch in a basement. I had been like already asking my parents, like, are we gonna go to the Super Bowl parade again? Like, will you let me skip school on Tuesday? Like everyone was already making plans because we'd done it all the previous season and we finally knew like what that looked like. And then dead silence in the house for like a solid probably 2 to 3 minutes of everyone being like, why would they do that? They have Marshawn Lynch. Like you just run the ball, just run the ball in and you win the game. So yes, I do remember where I was, what I was doing.
I don't think that anything in sports has ever shocked me as much as that, because it's not just, and there's people out there still, I'm sure this happened in Seattle. There's people out there still who will be like, no, it was the right thing to pass the football based on the defensive look. And when you see how many nose tackle, and you're like, oh, come on. Because Marshawn was playing at a level of football at that moment that was out of this world. He had made like an over the shoulder catch. He was running over the Patriots. There was absolutely no stopping him at that moment. And then, putting it on the shoulders of Russell Wilson in a quick game situation. Now, look, there is the math there that of all the Russell Wilson trips to the red zone, he's only thrown like 2 interceptions or something for his whole career. So that just happened to be the Patriots picking the right guy to jump the route. But it still will never stop blowing my mind. And that is funny because it becomes most of Russell Wilson's legacy, despite the fact that he won a Super Bowl with the Seattle Seahawks. And now here they are back. What I find so interesting about this, Emily, there's a little small connection to the Vikings. I don't know if you noticed at the quarterback position, but the other connection to the Vikings is that the Seattle Seahawks did a competitive rebuild. They did not tank. They did not go to the bottom where you have the Patriots who did, and to get Drake May and then have rebuilt that way. But I find it fascinating to look at what John Schneider has done as somebody who built a complete Super Bowl roster and then rebuilt a complete Super Bowl roster. And the Seahawks have never really gone to the bottom and were competitive all the way through. And it's been through some really crafty decisions from them, some draft picks that have ended up working out. And then, of course, the right decision to move on from Geno Smith and bring in Sam Darnold. I think it's an amazing job from their front office.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I know you have a question about this later. I don't know how deep we want to get into it now, but I think the quarterback room is certainly like just the way they constructed that quarterback room with the three guys they have in there, I think was really masterful in that obviously you have Sam who was like ready to come in and start. You have Drew Lock, who MIZ, another Mizzou grad, is like a guy that like at this point in his career knows he's a second string player and I think is fully okay with that and is also fully capable of going in and leading a few drives. Like you don't doubt that he can go in and control the game for a few snaps at a time. Now, I don't know that you'd want him leading like 4 or 5 games at this point, but he did go in there at times and was able to fill in for Sam. And then you have Jalen Milroe, who they are letting sit and develop and like what the relationship is between Sam and Jalen. And that was something that I wrote about back when I got to go out early before the Vikings played at Seattle earlier this season, and how like Sam and JJ, I don't think were like didn't have the space to become like a mentor mentee relationship because Sam knew that the Vikings wanted JJ to be the quarterback of their future, and JJ was also rehabbing. And there were all these limitations that now he doesn't have with Jalen in Seattle. And I think he's more able to tutor him. And like some of the things I heard from talking with the coaches out there, like Andrew Janoko, is that like Jalen hangs on every word Sam says, everything he does. And like they have a good setup there where when Sam's deal is up after another 2 seasons, like maybe Jalen is ready to take over for them at that point. Or maybe Sam, they're going to sign him to an extension and he's been a Super Bowl winning quarterback for them and they keep him around and they can keep building Jalen up for later. But I think that quarterback room was really well constructed this offseason.
And I think a lot of it on the defensive side was some really good understanding of what they needed. And Nicky Minware is probably the best possible fit there for the defense they were going to use, because Mike McDonald's strategy is to play nickel all the time, no matter what the other team does. So if the other team says, we're putting in 2, 3 tight ends, they're like, okay, that's fine. Because we have this dude who's basically like edge rusher size, who also can play corner with the way that he operates. And then, we knew it was a good guard class. The Vikings got a very good guard in Donovan Jackson. Gray Zabel, though, has stepped in for them. And it sort of speaks to, you also have to get lucky on some of these, but you also have to understand what fits for you. And with someone like Gray Zabel, they knew with Clint Kubiak they were going to run the football. And they drafted Ken Walker high, so they understood, like, we need sort of a mauler type physical guy that's, if you look at his athleticism, like next level athlete to come in here, and then we can run all those play actions off it for Sam Darnold. It's been a really great fit. But how have you reacted to Darnold making it? Because I'm going to tell you the truth on well, you've spent the entire last, I don't know how many months with me in the media room, and you know how obnoxious I've been about Sam Darnold in that media room. I've been twice as obnoxious about it on the show. So do you think, because even without listening, you know what I'm saying here, because I've said it all to you guys and argued with everybody in the room and everything else. But, like, do you think that I'm like going too far to be as critical of the Vikings about this as I have been?
I don't know that it's like too far. I think like it's an interesting conversation. The thing I've kept on coming back to with Sam and the Seahawks is like the way they've constructed that team and all the other things we just talked about, the defense being as good as it is and having a good O line, like has allowed him to basically, and I mean this as a compliment, like get by playing a very like baseline level of quarterback a lot of the time. And that's not to say that he's not doing some really good things out there. Like some of the passes he's thrown to Jackson Smith and Jigba have been beautiful. I did think that this NFC Championship game against the Rams was some of the best he's played this season, if not in his career. Like he really took a step up and was doing some great quarterbacking in that game. But a lot of what this team is just good roster construction and what they've built around him and what he's able to do. And I don't know. I don't think that if he was here, that magically makes the Vikings like a title contender this year. Like, I don't think like just swapping him back in for JJ with what the rest of this team looked like, and obviously the injuries they dealt with and stuff, because they like came into the beginning of the season with injuries. It's not like there was like there were injuries later in the season that accrued because of how the games were going, but they had injury issues from the start. And I don't know that that changes just because Sam was here. I think having a more veteran quarterback around for another year would have been good for the Vikings and for JJ. Obviously, I just talked all about that relationship with Jalen that Sam has now. But I do think it is not like as black and white of an issue as a lot of people want it to be. And I mean, that's just the nature of like every decision in the NFL. There's gray area in all of them.
Yeah, I think that if you're looking for the differences, now he did win 14 games with the Vikings with injuries. So this isn't like it was Nick Mullins going to the Jaguars and winning 14. And we all
Yeah.
went, well, who could have ever seen that coming? He was able to overcome a lot. And actually, I think last year made them look better than they were. They were more flawed last year. The run game element does matter a lot here. Kenneth Walker
Yes.
is a great football player, and Zach Charbonnet, they missed him last week, and I think a lot of that ends up being on Sam Darnold's shoulders to throw for 300, nearly 50 yards to beat Matthew Stafford in that game because they couldn't control the game quite as much. Because they didn't have their running back duo. So I think that that's different. And they have a Kubiak, and there's this whole history of Shanahan, Kubiak, all the way down that tree of those guys know how to run the football and play off of it. Whereas we know Kevin O'Connell has not had a successful running game since he's been here. So I think that that's different. But when I look at the defensive side of the ball and I go, man, if you took $40 million off of this roster of players that maybe underachieved or could have been replaced with somebody a little cheaper or whatever else, I still see a defense that would have been pretty elite. I think what you would get is those games early in the season you're talking about. But if you have good quarterback play in the Atlanta game, you can win that game. If you have good quarterback play in the Pittsburgh game, you can win that game. Like, I don't think they were winning 14 again with Sam Darnold,
Yeah.
but I think they're in that discussion. And as soon as Micah Parsons goes out and the Packers become human, and here's the Lions kind of melting, and you have Chicago, who's a little ahead of their timeline and maybe not that strong. Like, I see a team that's right in that conversation to be going in the playoffs with Sam Darnold. But to your point, which I think is the maybe part of the main thing, he landed in the exact right spot of a team that was ready for him and constructed for him, because I don't think he's Tom Brady. I also don't think anybody is Tom Brady. And I think that the best quarterback in the world got eliminated, in the last round. So, against the Denver Broncos. So it's not always that. It's always the complete team. My joke is the best way to get to the Super Bowl is to be good at everything. Shocker, hot take. This is why you listen to the show. So I think that the Seattle's a better team, but I don't know they're a better team by like 50 miles from what the Vikings would have been. But, the bigger thing for me about the decision, Emily, is not just that Sam played great, and that's who he was always supposed to be as a number 3 overall pick, and was a great leader for them, and no quarterback should get blamed for a playoff game. Like, it's all your fault. That should never happen because it's best on best, and sometimes they are better than you. I think it's more for me about the incomplete information that's what it is for me. Is JJ McCarthy had played one preseason game against the Raiders second teamers, and you were that confident that he was going to step in and be able to do at least 75% of what Sam Darnold did, having never seen him play a game. And they kept going back to his age. Oh, he's this young. He's this young. Well, were you aware of his DOB when you decided to do this? Were you aware that he'd only thrown 700 passes since high school, and he didn't even put up big numbers in college? Like, all these things were sort of like warning sign, warning sign, warning sign. And they're like, no, Sam melted down the playoffs. We got to go for it with JJ McCarthy. And to me, making a decision based on that's what it felt like the main factor is just a flawed logic to me.
I think, yes, they could have put more resources at him. That doesn't guarantee that Sam would have still wanted to be here. Like, even if they offer him a contract close to what Seattle was offering or better, though that feels like that probably wouldn't have happened. Like, Sam could have still kind of read the card. Like, he still had agency in that situation and could have read the cards and been like, okay, am I around another year? And then they decide. Like, I think he, as someone who has gone through so much instability in his career and has been disregarded by fan base after fan base, I think he was probably seeking a little bit of a home and a stability that, even if the Vikings had been like, let's get you on another year contract, like, let's franchise tag you, keep you here another year, then it's just like, okay, well, then we're having the same conversation. I'm having the same conversation a year from now. And do I want to be doing that? And so, yes, I think the Vikings maybe could have tried a little bit harder. Like, we don't know exactly how hard they tried or didn't. We know that they were also going after Daniel Jones and seeing if he would stick around. But Sam still had agency in that decision. And I would be curious. I don't know if eventually ever he'll talk about whether how much he would have wanted to stay if it was a better situation, but I'd be curious for that answer.
Yeah, I think Sam is always going to keep his cards close to the vest, as you know. And even when they were playing the Vikings, and a lot of people were like, "Tell us about when you left the Vikings," he was like, "No, I ain't doing that."
Yeah.
Even, I mean, even when he wins the NFC Championship and dominates and plays some of the best football of his career, he's like, "Yeah, man, we had a good game plan. My teammates are great." So you can never prod him and get those feelings out of him. But I'm sure when he talks to his friends and family, he would have probably said, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, that JJ McCarthy was the golden boy and he knew that. And there is another retelling of this that he comes back and has one tough game and the fans are booing him off the field because they were so in love with JJ McCarthy. And I mean, it's mean of me to call him JJ Myth-Carthy, but it's not really a shot at him so much as like what was created here by the Vikings, by Kevin O'Connell calling him the franchise quarterback, and also just by the way hype and buzz works. That the old saying is the backup quarterback's the most popular person. And it's like the guy who you haven't seen. This goes for owners firing their coaches. The coach that you haven't seen is always the best coach because you know all of your coach's flaws. So the minute that he had a bad game, it was going to be get Sam out of there, get the next, get JJ and everything else. But I do think for Sam, it worked out much better. I think for them, what they may have been able to realize is when he came back, oh, he's not really ready and he does need more development. And now this buys us time to where maybe he would have been ready after the next season. But it was pretty clear by week 1, week 2, that this was not a quarterback who was matured yet to lead a franchise with this high of expectations. And I thought that Jonathan Grenard said it all with his tweet, ... Like, that was us just last year. We just needed the right matchup, the right situation, the right roster moves around him, and so forth. And maybe, and now we'll move on. I promise. We'll move on to the bit that I've got for you because we're gonna have some fun. And I know people are probably just exhausted of this discussion, but I can't help but kind of think about like had Darnold come back, that maybe in free agency they would have been a little more crafty as opposed to just cash, throw every dollar at every free agent. And then when you lay them out on paper, you go, did this really add up to what you were looking for? And I'm all for spending around the rookie quarterback contract, but it was almost like with a chainsaw and not a scalpel that they went into free agency last year and just threw the cash at anybody and everything that they wanted.
Yeah, I mean, Kevin O'Connell said it numerous times there at the end of the season. Like, there's going to be a lot of self evaluation about how last season went, but also last off season. And I mean, we got to wait another month to see another month and a half, but we'll see if they kind of took any lessons from how they did that last year. And between the quarterback and all those other positions you mentioned, yeah, because there's going to be some restructuring that they need to do. There's going to be some difficult decisions on cuts and personnel that they have here that they're going to have to do. And obviously, the quarterback is still to solve this offseason.
Well, that sounds like a good transition, Emily. Here's the thing. So your last name is Leiker, and I thought I was really clever. And I was like, you know what we should do is a bit called "You Like That." Emily Leiker, you like that? And you're like, no, I already
Mhm.
thought of that. I started a blog about with that name. Okay, fine. So I wasn't the first to ever come up with it, but that is the bit. So here's what I've done. I've created 3 plans for the Minnesota Vikings in the offseason. And you have to decide whether you like that plan or you do not like that plan. And if you do, you have to scream, you like, no, you don't have to do that, but
Like Kirk.
that is what Kirk would do. Okay, so here's the first plan. I have them on my phone. The first plan for the Vikings that I came up with to see if you would like is to make a trade for Mac Jones, but it's a complicated trade that also involves Jordan Addison going to the San Francisco 49ers with a second and third round pick swap. So the Vikings get Mac Jones, a pick swap. They move from the third up to the second, and they send Addison. And then after that, they draft a wide receiver in the first or second round, because remember, they'll have a second round pick now. So they're going to draft a receiver, draft a center, and go out and sign Javonte Williams, running back from the Dallas Cowboys. So they are loading up around offense after moving on from Jordan Addison. They're bringing in Mac Jones. You like that?
I think as an overall, I do like this one. I have a question. Are they drafting a center that they want to be able to play immediately?
I think they
Interesting.
might have to. I mean, have you looked at the free agent list for centers? There's a couple guys, but it's not impressive.
And you're out on Michael Jurgens being able to go next year, Blake Brandel stepping in, you're out on all those options?
I have a deep respect for backup offensive linemen who are ready to play at a moment's notice. They work so hard all the time, but I think that there's a clear line when you're talking about watching Ryan Kelly and what that looked like. Holy cow, he is so good. And then the drop off. I thought Brandel was serviceable, but 17 games, I don't think so. Michael Jurgens, to me, would have to take a gargantuan step. He belongs in the NFL, but does he belong as a starting center? That would have to really be proven to me. So I think you have to do a lot better than that if you're going to have a top-notch offense.
I think that's the main thing I'm dubious about here is like just like a rookie center being
Mm,
able to go, especially with like obviously Mac is more experienced than JJ is. But like I think to like play a rookie center, you have to have a quarterback who's really sure of
mhm.
himself and really sure of what he's calling and able to make a lot of checks and just has like a complete control over the offense. And I don't know that like working with a new quarterback to Kevin O'Connell's system, working with a young quarterback, if they try to go to JJ again, say Mac doesn't look as good here or whatever, that would be like the main part of this plan I'm dubious about. I think trading away Addison is an interesting conversation because even though he got those charges dropped against them or they were never filed for that most recent arrest, like there's a lot of questions around him. And do you want to spend the money on a fifth year option, which would be a lot of money, as you're also paying Justin Jefferson, obviously, for a few more years? So I think that's intriguing. Drafting a wide receiver, I think, is intriguing and is definitely like probable for them. Whether it be that high, I don't know. Signing a safety, I haven't looked at the safety market. Do you have names that you would be
Oh,
like
that's right. I
intrigued
did.
by with
I
that?
included that a veteran safety.
Yeah.
I didn't think over the names. I kind of thought
Okay.
whoever this is how we do free agency. Whoever Brian Flores decides is the right guy, we're like, okay, good. He must have fit whatever qualifications Flores has for him. Sort of like the Isaiah Rodgers. Like, well, if he likes Isaiah Rodgers, then Isaiah Rodgers, everyone. So I just whoever Flores likes would be
Okay.
the safety, but. In terms of Mac Jones and moving Jordan Addison, I think moving Jordan Addison is a little bit on the bold side here
Yeah.
because you're talking about someone that Kevin O'Connell has really put himself out there for over the last couple years. And the Mac Jones idea to me, the reason that I would like it to some extent is that JJ McCarthy should win the job if he's made the progress they wanted him to make. But if he doesn't, this guy has taken a team to the playoffs before, and you need to make the playoffs. And I think it would be his best setup, even this year in San Francisco, where they were banged up and they didn't have a lot of weapons. This would be Mac Jones's best setup ever. He is a first round draft pick. He does have, accuracy, timing. He could throw the football. So I think it's good competition, but Mac is sort of settled into a spot where he is more of a backup quarterback in the NFL these days. And if JJ takes that step, he should be able to win that camp competition.
Though I guess we should say, like, Darnold had just come off a season of
Right.
being a backup in San Francisco when he landed in Minnesota. So I don't know. Who's to say Mac can't go crazy in Kevin O'Connell's system? I don't know. But yeah, I would say overall, I like this one. I think there's certain I'm dubious about that center, and then obviously giving away Addison would be a pretty big move for them to make. But I can see the vision of this one.
It's just so tough for me to find another center. I mean, there's like Cade
Yeah,
Mays from Carolina, who's a free agent. Luke, is it Fortner is a free agent if you got it right there. I mean,
I'm looking.
it's just not a very good class of free agents outside of Tyler Linderbaum, who I would expect is going to get somewhere in the ballpark of $20 million per year. And I just don't think the Vikings are able to get him. And also overthecap.com melts my computer every time. So I am not looking it up while we're talking. But it's just, I was writing about this list yesterday on my newsletter, looking at the offensive line. Oh yeah, I have it right here. Hold on. I'll get you these names. Let me scroll. Because I wrote about this, of course, I put it below the thing. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The point is that I couldn't really find many guys that you'd say, wow, what an upgrade outside of Tyler Linderbaum. So that's why I went with the draft. Well, let's get to our second plan, because I think we agree, like, Ryan Kelly's not going to come back and
Yeah.
these other guys are backup type centers. Plan number 2 of you like that is to sign Kyler Murray, which everyone just left a thumbs down on the comments. I understand, but we're going to see what you think. To sign Kyler Murray after he's released by the Cardinals. Now, the key here is that my cap expert guy said it should be a Russell Wilson situation where they could sign him to the minimum. So maybe that changes your opinion. You're not going to have to pay him like $30-40 million. So you sign him, you rework Javon Hargrave's deal or sign another defensive tackle, draft a defensive tackle, draft a corner, and then sign the best safety on the market and go all in on being the number 1 defense. We all agree they were a great defense this year. Flores did a good job, but they had some flaws. So this would be all in on defense.
My thing with adding Kyler is if you add Kyler, I think you also need to add someone with a little bit more maturity than both him and JJ McCarthy. And are they going to bring in 2 quarterbacks? I don't know. I just like I wonder about the locker room fit with him. I wonder about he's like forgetting to look at his playbook or whatever that was a few years ago and like playing all these video games. Like I just like if you're bringing him in, I don't see it like making that much of a difference to what they had this year, honestly. Like I don't know that he brings as much competition. He certainly brings a level of competition to JJ McCarthy, but I don't know that he brings as much as some of the other options as Mac Jones, as we've just laid out. And then I have those other concerns about like, how is this a personality fit? And can he handle the intensity of this offense that we have seen give younger quarterbacks problems this year? So that part of it, I don't know that I like. I don't think I like that part. I've kind of been like, I understand why people are talking about Kyler from the money side of things, from just trying to get a body in here easily that is going to challenge JJ McCarthy. I just don't know if it's the best answer. I think they're probably going to rework Hargrave regardless. I don't think they'll get rid of him, but I think they'll have to rework that. I was big last year on drafting a cornerback. It was not as big as drafting a tight end, as we talked about on your show. But I was pretty surprised when they did not draft a cornerback or a safety last year, considering how good that class was. So I find it impossible to believe they wouldn't draft one this year, especially with the state of that room. And I mean, Jeff Okudah went on IR, and then we never heard anything about how he was doing at the end of the season. And obviously, Byron Murphy stepped up at the end of the season and had some big plays, but I think they need young talent in that room to kind of bring up behind those guys. And then again, you have signed best safety here. I mean, they just have to do that. They have to bring in a safety because Harrison Smith almost certainly is done. We're waiting for that official announcement, but everything that we witnessed in the locker room for like the final 4 or 5 games of the season indicated that he is probably done.
I mean, I suppose it's possible that he could see Flores come back and be like, 1 more year, but it just didn't feel that way really at all. I mean, how emotional he was at the end of the season. And, you know, I think you could start to see that he's never shown ever before to me in front of us is the toll, like how much this game like wears you down physically, emotionally at the end. And he's always been, you know, a guy willing to play through stuff and that kind of thing. So that to me says you probably will have to find the next best safety. So here's my thing about the comparison with Kyler and the Vikings this year is in 2024 in a at least similarly rooted system that Drew Petzing was running. 2024, they were 15th, the Arizona Cardinals, in expected points added through the pass. The Vikings this year, I think, I can pull it back up, were like 26th or something even worse. I can get it real quick here. I mean, this is not a great quarterback, and it's, of course, yeah, they were 28th. So we're talking about if the Vikings this year had the 15th best EPA in passing, I mean, they would have been in the playoffs for sure. And they may have been a little bit scary depending on what you have. And that's not even to mention that Kyler ran for 500 yards. So to me, that's like the can you get to that like 15th best quarterback in the league? But I think that what you're bringing up with the personality issues are certainly valid. How is he going to lead here when there's so many discussions all the time surrounding this guy about being a leader, accountability, how he interacts with other people on the team? The only thing I would say there is that, I mean, you have about as stable of a situation with leadership as you can find with the Vikings,
That's
right?
true.
So he may be able to just sort of come in and run the plays and like, hey, I'm a visitor here and go forward. But I think that's an extremely valid point. And also, if you're aiming for the 15th best, does that really get you in the discussion with Seattle, who's had great quarterback play or, MVP level play from the New England Patriots, MVP level play from the Los Angeles Rams? Like, does mid do anything for you? I think is also a fair discussion.
Yeah, and I don't know that we beyond like bringing in competition, which was like the catchphrase of the season finale press conference. Like we don't really know like what they're envisioning with this edition, and is it just pushing McCarthy? Is it taking over another year so that McCarthy can kind of sit back and spend another year learning, but a more active year learning where he's on the field and doing things like that? Is it a full replacement? And they are expecting that whoever they bring in is going to be the quarterback for a 3-year contract like Darnold, and they're eventually going to draft another quarterback and move on from JJ entirely. Like the way they left things at the end of the season leaves a lot of doors open for what competition looks like. And I think that's why it's been like generally so hard for us as like a media corps to like narrow in on like this is the guy, because it's like all of these guys would work, but in like very different scenarios. Like the scenario where they bring in Mac Jones, I think looks a lot different than the scenario where they bring in Kyler, or the scenario where they bring in the next guy we're going to talk about, or where they trade for Joe Burrow, if that's like legitimately on the table, or any of those things. Like all of those scenarios indicate like very different ways of thinking about what their quarterback room looks like for the next potentially 3 to 5 years.
I think that's a great point. Everything is on the table, which is why we're looking at all these different options. But there's even, I mean, when you use the word like highly competitive and stuff like that, that to me says we're getting a real quarterback in here. And, last year they talked about how much they wanted Daniel Jones, which doesn't make it better, by the way, that you wanted him. Like that's great. I also, I don't know, whatever. It's sort of like when a team comes out and will say, you know, I was in on Puka Nakua in the 5th round, but they just drafted him before us. And you're like, did you have 4 other rounds or did you have an option there? Anyway, the third you like that. So you don't really like that one. You like the first one. The third you like
Mhm.
that. Of course, it had to include Kirk Cousins, the guy who said you like that. So the third plan is to sign Kirk, battle it out with JJ, trade for Anthony Richardson as a development project, and draft a running back, replace Jalen Naylor with a second round wide receiver. So you're not trading Addison, you're just drafting a very talented potential long-term replacement for Addison. Sign a veteran corner to add a little more experience to that room, and a defensive tackle and a safety to bolster the D. This would be if they moved on from Javon Hargrave. But the main thing here would be sign Kirk, get another weapon for him, I wrote Jeremiah Love. I don't think he's going to be available, but hey, you never know. I don't know. He might drop in the first. These draft people think they know everything, but Desmond Ritter was a 3rd round pick, or no, it was Malik Willis who they had. Oh, wait, Shadur Sanders. Yeah, Pro Bowler Shadur Sanders. He was
Pro Bowl
a
replacement.
Yes,
Shadur
yes, Pro
Sanders.
Bowl replacement, was a 5th round pick when Mel Kiper had him top 10. So, they don't know what they're doing. But you like that.
Do you have trade? What are you thinking for a trade for Anthony Richardson?
Oh, like a 6th.
Okay, so very low. I want to say I like that just because I think the like reality TV style drama of bringing Kirk back in 2 years after what unfolded and having him and JJ in the same room and going through all that is like so so intriguing to me. I like that would just be very interesting to talk about and like get into the mentality of how it feels coming back after making this big like I'm going to leave and I don't want to be here because they're going to move on and then like ultimately like kind of tucking your tail um and coming back. I don't do we think though that he wants to stay there now that Stefanski's down like does he care like does he look is he looking to move?
That is something I really don't know. You're right. Like they
Yeah.
brought in a guy who had success with Kirk as his quarterback. And also they don't know for sure is Michael Penix ready to go in week one because he's going to have to learn an entire new offense at the same
Mhm.
time. So it makes all the sense in the world for them to re-sign Kirk to a 1-year contract because they're going to have to, the way that their situation is set up, they're going to have to cut him. It would
Yeah.
be very funny though for him to be playing on like a 1-year, $10 million deal and also counting toward the cap or with whatever giant number that he's going to have. But there wouldn't be anything more Kirkian, I guess, than that, based on his history. I don't know how they view it. He also may feel so spurned by them and so disrespected by them that he was just playing it out and he's a pro, so he's going to be ready to play when they called upon him, but he's like, "No, I'm getting the heck out of here." And one thing from that Netflix documentary, he said that he regretted leaving Minnesota and hey, I should have just signed there and been their bridge quarterback. Man, how things would have been different with that because the Achilles was not healed yet. But he looked okay last year. To me, this is not a viable plan to bring back Kirk
No.
because you're just not competing really at all.
And that's what I was gonna say is like I like this in the theory of intrigue and like just the storylines that it would produce and like all of that. But like in practicum, I don't know that this actually helps your quarterback situation at all, both bringing in Kirk and trading for Anthony Richardson. Like, I just don't know that that's really doing anything that's going to put you in a different spot a year or two from now than you are at this moment. Drafting a running back high, sure, yes, go for it. Drafting wide receivers second round, yes, I like that. Um, Signing a veteran cornerback, yes, I would still also like them to bring in young talent. I think that has to be in there and not like a seventh round day 3 guy. Like I would like that to start in the first or second day and then get someone there. Or even like I would take like fifth round. I think you could go with like a cornerback or a safety because those classes are usually deeper than a lot of the other position groups. But yeah, the quarterbacks, I don't think I ultimately like this plan in reality for the Vikings, but the rest of it, I would say I like that.
It just feels like whatever they're going to do is going to have nothing to do with the future. Like when it comes to like how they're going to draft, how they're going to deal with free agency, how they're going to handle the salary cap. There's really no point in that. I mean, I haven't asked your perspective on it, so I'm interested, but I've treated 2026, this upcoming season, as being kind of like, all right, we've come to the end of a certain road and there's a fork there and you're either going one way or the other. That's kind of how I view it.
I mean, that's certainly how I think and like the NFL today is. I you just don't like no one has a long rope anymore unless you're the coach of the Steelers and then you can make the playoffs and lose in the first round for however many years Tomlin was there and then that's it. And then you bring in Mike McCarthy and probably the same thing's going to happen. But that's how it is. I mean, we talked about that with JJ at the beginning of the season is like no one wanted to give him a rope. Now, the tenor around that conversation has understandably changed and maybe the rope was plenty long. Um so I understand that and I think it's valid. I personally feel like I want to see how free agency plays out and like what they do cuz honestly that's in some way I feel like more telling to how this organization is being run than what the on-field results are. Because as we talked about, they do have like already enough talent in this locker room that like presumably they should always be having a winning record with this roster. And obviously they got there this year by the skin of their teeth, like, but they did it. It's if we just see another offseason where it doesn't feel like there's a cohesive vision of what needs to be done to get over that playoff hump and get to the divisional round or the championship, the conference championship, like there just needs to be a cohesive vision, and we can't be talking about quarterbacks a week before a draft because they haven't signed even a backup. Like there needs to be a decision on that earlier than there was this year. So I'm like waiting to hold judgment on what 2026 needs to be in terms of like results and like bearing for KOC and Quasey's future until seeing how they handle the like this free agency in particular. I think the draft too, but free agency in particular, like there needs to be like a cohesive, strong vision of what the quarterback looks like and what they're wanting to do. Um, yeah,
I made a mistake last offseason not caring about the backup situation because I assumed if you were moving on from a quarterback of Darnold's production, that you must have been so all in on JJ McCarthy. And if you're turning down Aaron Rodgers, then you must have been so all in on JJ McCarthy that, hey, like, who cares if it's Sam Howell or whatever? And I will say, like, Daniel Jones is just a smart guy, so he made the right decision. If Daniel Jones is the quarterback, they're definitely more competitive than they were. I question if it was going to be exactly the same because his running back was playing like an MVP, and
yeah.
the Vikings running game was okay. It was not Jonathan Taylor scoring 3 touchdowns a game. So that's quite a bit different from the circumstance he had in Indianapolis. And if you look at any of the other backup options other than Carson Wentz, you would be hard pressed from what anybody signed to say that Carson Wentz wasn't just as good as the Joe Flacco, the Tyrod Taylor, the whatever else. Anyway, so you're right that now that we know that JJ McCarthy is not fully proven that he's that guy, you have to do much, much better for his competition. So I want to do a couple of, and this has been really, really great. I want to do a couple rapid fire. You like that? So, I won't talk forever. On FanDuel right now, the Seattle Seahawks are 4.5 point favorites. That's where the line is opening against the New England Patriots. Super Bowl matchup. You like that?
I do like that. As we covered at the top, I'm excited for the rematch. Hopefully, Mike McDonald makes the right call if they end up at the goal line in a win it or lose it scenario.
And maybe the Patriots won't have stolen their signals all year or something, or deflated footballs or whatever they did before. What is it? Number two, rapid fire is what do you like the most about the way these two teams were constructed? Like, what's your number one thing if you were saying, hey, this was really awesome by whichever team? Like, what's the number one?
Yeah, I think we talked about with the Seahawks already. I like the QB room construction. I like the ready to play young secondary addition in Nick Emanwari, and just their secondary overall. Patriots. I wasn't thinking of Patriots before this. Obviously, I like Drake May. I remember when we were all watching him in training camp and we're like, wow, this guy, he can sling it. Um, and I like that the Patriots have like a variety of weapons, offensive weapons for him to lean on when he needs them, because that's, I mean, not to like kind of sway the conversation, but that's what the problem with the Bills has been. And
Mhm.
that would be a whole nother hour long conversation
Yes.
you and I could have. But like the Bills have not set Josh Allen up with other weapons to use. And that's why he's constantly having to super. Yes, they have James Cook, but like he does not have a receiving core that is worthy of playing with the level of quarterback that Josh Allen can be at his best. And so I think the Patriots have a good start of building weapons around May that he has, like Hunter Henry and obviously Stephon Diggs is out there. They've got a good group there, a good foundation. I think they can continue to build it, but that's what I'd say for them.
I think my favorite part is just the Mike Vrabel hire, like bringing in a coach who elevated the Tennessee Titans to relevancy with Ryan Tannehill as their quarterback, who clearly just knows how to lead a franchise, knows how to delegate people on the offensive defensive side. They get Josh McDaniels, who is not a good head coach, but sure is a good offensive coordinator. I think that he did a great job building a staff and building, we use culture all the time, but truly just knows how to be a professional coach. And as you saw when he's here for the joint practices, a man with a presence that
Yeah.
nobody is not going to take him seriously when he speaks. So that maybe just getting him feels like the move. How about, well, we kind of just talked about this a little, but you didn't say whether you liked it. My rapid fire was, do you like the idea of judging them on 2026? I think as you said, it's the reality of the NFL, but do you like that?
I don't like it. Like, it as, like, a whole, like, just overall, like, I do think, like, the level to which we have gotten to be an instant gratification culture at all elements of our culture is a bad thing. Um, but I understand with this situation. I understand why people are going there. So I don't like it, but I understand.
I also don't think it's the smartest thing to judge coaches in some sort of Game of Thrones final showdown type of
Yeah.
situation. But
And again, like you said, like the reason people always want someone out is because they know their flaws.
yeah,
Every coach has flaws. Like everyone comes in and you realize, oh, well, this person isn't good at this. Like there's always going to be problems with a coach. Like no coaching staff is perfect. And so it is easy to be like, get out the pitchforks. Like he doesn't run the ball often enough. Like we gotta burn it all down. But yeah, I don't know.
well, I did check this the other day because I've mentioned on the show a couple times, but KOC was hired in 2022, and there were 9 other coaches hired, 10 total. And there are 2 remaining. And
Mm,
one of them, so everyone else has been fired, and one of them is Todd Bowles, who's absolutely on the hot seat. And Todd Bowles also kind of inherited a team that had won the Super Bowl and has been fine there, and I don't think he's really been all that great. So they're giving him a lot of time, but it just shows you the absurd turnover that happens with coaching. And if you have someone who really knows how to do this job, like we're talking about Mike Vrabel, I guarantee you, if you go back and read Tennessee Titans stuff in Mike Vrabel's last year, it probably picks apart every single thing that is not perfect about Mike Vrabel, right? And McDonald hasn't been around long enough for this to happen, but it someday will. That when this team declines or regresses next year, or Sam's not as good, it'll be like, why isn't McDonald talking enough to Sam on the sideline, or why does he run the same defense he's run all the time? It's like all whatever it is, live long enough to be the villain in the NFL that way. Okay, final thing, and I left this completely open for your interpretation. You can take it wherever you want to take it. Your favorite thing, or the thing you liked the most about the 2025 National Football League season?
Well, my micro personal answer is I liked being around for the full season, so I
Yeah.
had the full context of what
Yes.
had happened before and everything. It was nice to feel like I was fully in the know of what was going on. But my broader answer is I liked that the league had parity this year. I think both at the NFL level and the college level, there has been an absence of parity in recent years. It's been the same teams, it's been the same players that we're talking about. And this year in the NFL in particular, it felt like there was a wider array of things we were talking about, of teams we were talking about. I mean, like the Jaguars being interesting, like the Browns having like Miles Garrett, and obviously Miles Garrett has been good, but like just having him as like a consistent talking point throughout the season. These younger coaches like Grant Udinsky that are like actually getting real interest for jobs and stuff. I just thought there was like we kind of opened the gates on talking points from it just being like the Chiefs, the Rams, the Bills, the Ravens, the Bengals, and like these teams that we've been talking about. And obviously that's all cyclical, right? Because it's like, okay, are we now just going back to 12 years ago when the Seahawks were relevant for 4 or 5 years and we were talking about them and that happens. But I think this was like a really special season in terms of like there being a lot to be interested in and a lot that was like actually interesting because like it's one thing to be like to have like a personal interest but like there were things like across the league that it was like oh this has no relevance to what I'm covering or what I need to do like in my job but like I'm really intrigued by this team or this person and that was refreshing and I hope it continues for a few years it does feel like we're kind of in like one of those transitional swings in the NFL where the teams that are in power are kind of in motion and Um, defenses or offenses are catching up to defenses that had kind of been in power over the past 10 years. So I think we're in for a good couple years of football, and hopefully for the Vikings sake they can kind of keep their claws in being relevant and maybe climb up that ladder a little bit.
I think you hit the number one answer. I think that's the best answer, is that as we went through this, we weren't really sure. And last year when it got to Chiefs Eagles, it was like, fair enough.
Yeah.
Like, all right, well, not that they don't deserve it, but it's kind of boring. Seahawks, Patriots, a team that won 4 games, a quarterback that was left to go find some other house after winning 14 games and has fought his way back. I mean, there's great stories here. And I think that's what you and I as journalists like the most. So when it comes to you like that, I really like this episode. This was fun. I think in the second half of it, we had a lot of entertainment after getting over the Darnold discussion. But Emily, it's great to have you around all year, and you will certainly continue to be a regular guest on the show. So thank you so much for your time, and I'll see you when I don't know, maybe combine or whatever it is we got next to go out there for.
Yeah, we'll see if anything pops up before the combine, and if not, we'll be looking at those wide receivers, running backs, and cornerbacks as we covered today.
Yes, we will. And they have enough fourth tight ends, so I don't know that
Yeah,
you'll
I
need to
don't.
do your deep dives for this year.
Tight ends off the table this year. I think they've got it covered.
All right, Emily, take care, and football.
Football.
Folks, have you noticed that social media has now been around long enough to the point where you can see old posts of yourself only with a better hairline? Well, unless you're one of those genetically gifted few people with amazing hair for life, you're probably dealing with that pang of frustration that comes along with seeing your old self. I have been there, but it doesn't have to be that way. These aren't the old days where there were no good answers for hair loss. These days, we've got Hims. They make it so simple for you with a 100% online access to personalized treatment plans that put your goals first. They use doctor-trusted, clinically proven ingredients like finasteride and minoxidil that stop further hair loss and regrow hair within 3 to 6 months. For simple online access to personalized and affordable care for hair loss, ED, weight loss, and more, visit hims.com/purple insider. That is hims.com/purple insider for your free online visit. hims.com/purple insider. Individual results may vary based on studies of topical and oral minoxidil and finasteride. Featured products include compound drug products, which the FDA does not approve or verify for safety, effectiveness, or quality. Prescription required. See website for details, restrictions, and important safety information. All right, it is time once again for the Robinson Roundup with Maggie Robinson, who last week, by the way, had some comments that were quoted by Pro Football Talk. So we thank Mike Florio for giving a listen. And hey, Mike, if you can use your influence to help Maggie down the road with her career, please do, my friend. So we got a lot to get to. Just before we hit record, though, Maggie, some news that made me almost fall out of my chair, which is hard to do. Like, I cover the Vikings. We get a lot of shocking news, but this I was really stunned by. So why don't we start there, and then we'll go through a lot of action around the NFL.
So Bill Belichick was passed over in his first round of eligibility for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He is not eligible in this class on his first round. That's shocking. What do you think?
I cannot believe this. For Belichick to not get elected in his first attempt is senseless. It's insane. I have no idea what any explanation could be for not voting for Bill Belichick. Now, look, if any voter didn't write his name down for the Hall of Fame because he has maybe gone a little off the deep end recently, struggled at North Carolina, maybe some personal relationships that I would rather not dive into because that's a Bill Belichick problem, not a me problem. There could also be some salty folks about the scandals that happened throughout his career, whether it was deflating footballs, filming practices, etc., etc., and who knows what the heck else that may have happened that we never found out about with Bill Belichick. But the bottom line, this is one of the GOATs of the coaching universe, the gold standard in history. It's Vince Lombardi, it's Bill Walsh, and Bill Belichick's name is right in that conversation. And to not elect him to the Hall of Fame is, I mean, what? Egotistical or I have no idea with the Hall of Fame. I've had a lot of issues with them recently because they've decided to make it harder to get into the Hall as opposed to easier, which is crazy because you're leaving out a lot of people who are deserving, a lot of players. And the goal of the Hall of Fame is for the fans. It's for them to go visit and them to learn about the greatest players of generations, not to hold some sort of level that's so high that you can only get in one person a year or something like that. I think that they're missing the point a little bit. This vindictive, I guess, to go after Belichick, whose reputation right now is not what it once was, but totally insane, completely senseless. This would be like not putting in Joe Montana in his first time. It's this so obvious of a person who should be selected. I'm at a loss. I'm just at a total loss.
Listen, I don't disagree with you at all. However, recent memory, past events that just happened, his so-called personal matters with someone younger than me, that's a little troubling. And I think maybe that clouded the judgment of a few voters. They're like, well, hey, here's a bunch of other guys who, at least publicly, haven't tarnished their entire football reputation with a few personal relationships and also all those things you were just talking about. But I really do think that his whole Jordan Hudson UNC CBS interview saga that we've been living through for the past year and a half has really put a bad taste in people's mouths. And I think we're really in real time seeing the repercussions of that. And people are like, listen, you might have just played yourself with that one. I hope it's worth it. But football wise, great. Character wise, not sure. But then again, do they have like a checklist at the Hall of Fame where they're like, morals, check. Or, you know?
Well, it's a little subjective, I think, when it comes to that. If they're trying to do some Major League Baseball, like, oh, well, they held Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens out for doing steroids, so we're going to hold out Bill Belichick and punish him for Deflategate or for Spygate. Cheesy, corny. I very much doubt that Bill Belichick was the only person to ever film a practice, just the one who got caught. And I guess I wonder, are these writers who didn't vote him in, are they Jets writers? Is that how this ended up happening? Or are there, because I think there were 10 people who didn't vote for them, who should all be completely ashamed of themselves for whatever reason they could come up with. But you might be right that there might be some folks who do throw out that morality clause and say, well, we're going to keep him out because of this. These are the same people who didn't put Terrell Owens in right away. And Terrell Owens is one of the top 10 wide receivers in the history of the National Football League. And they said, well, he wasn't the greatest teammate, so we're going to make him pay for that. And to me, the pompousness of that, the self-importance of that is so outrageous that it's hard to take it seriously. But I think I'm going to say that I had the best joke on the internet about it. Okay. It's topical. It's recent. My joke was, but Shadur Sanders was unanimously elected to the Hall of Fame. The Pro Bowl thing, right? Am I right? Okay. Whatever. Kids' humor is different these days, but we can move on to other stuff. It's bizarre. I don't get it. There's about 20 people, and maybe I'm also just salty because Jim Marshall should have been in the Hall of Fame and passed away, and they didn't put him in there. And it was almost like they dug their heels in to purposefully say, no, we are putting our foot down here and not putting in a guy who played the most consecutive games, who was a captain through the Purple People Eaters, through a great player, because he didn't have enough Pro Bowls or whatever, which I think we're seeing that maybe Pro Bowls is not the best way to judge a player. So anyway, move me off the topic. I'll just keep ranting. Go ahead.
All right, let's go over. We've been recapping it for the past 3 to 4 weeks. The coaching carousel. We have a new head coach. Okay, drum roll, please. Joe Brady, hired as the Buffalo Bills head coach, or shall I say promoted, because he was their offensive coordinator. He has now been elevated. And I want to take you through a little bit of his background history before we get into why he's the guy for this job. Okay. So he started off, he was a player at William and Mary, and then went to New Orleans, worked with the Saints for a bit, worked at LSU, and this is kind of where he broke out. He was a passing game coordinator. He helped them win a national championship. He was coaching Joe Burrow while he was at LSU. Like, this was the LSU heyday. Go Tigers. And then he went to Carolina and he was the offensive coordinator, and then came to Buffalo, moved back down to the quarterbacks coach, then interim offensive coordinator, and now head coach. So they've seen him through a lot, and he's done his time around the league. I want to hear your thoughts though. Sean McDermott obviously seems like a pretty beloved guy there, and this is something different. What do you think?
Different and the same at the same time.
Yeah.
I mean, staying in-house after firing your head coach is very rare. Like, you just don't see this very often, to say it was all that guy's fault. And I think that a lot of the focus of criticism was on the offensive side of the football. Now, a lot of it also goes back to the front office. And if you're just reading the tea leaves here, I think that it looks like a power play from the general manager, the entire thing of, he was worried about getting the heat from Sean McDermott about the roster. And so he convinced the owner that it was actually the head coach's fault. So they fired the head coach. And now he picks somebody from internal. And look, who knows about the candidates, because we've seen some very good candidates recently in other searches who said, I don't love that situation. I'm not going to go there. But, Buffalo does have Josh Allen. So it's a pretty good job. And to say the best person in the world for this job is right here in our building seems a little bit on the suspect side, and seems much more like Brandon Beane wanted there to be no questioning at all of his position. He's the guy. And so they just bump up somebody else from internal, as opposed to, if you bring someone else from the outside, then that person is now less tenured than you. And they kind of have I don't want to call it like the advantage, but as the new person who probably has, I would guess, demands about roster and things like that, where Joe Brady in the building, sort of lucky to be there. So he goes from, I thought he was going to be fired. I thought that his offense was very meh. And now he's the head coach. It's an odd situation. And my read from Buffalo fans and media is, they're not impressed. They are not impressed by, you're going to fire the guy from this regime for the guy from this regime. It's a little bit odd, but number 17 is still really good at football. And I expect them, regardless, to be a very good team next year.
I think he's kind of walking into the fire too. There are going to be insanely high expectations for him, more so than if they brought in an outside candidate, because it's like, oh no, you really got to prove why this guy's the guy. Like, we all assumed you were going to go out and grab one of these brand new, young, fresh guys who's working his way up, and kind of same deal. But like you're saying, coming from inside the house feels a little different. So I don't know. I'm just intrigued to see how those expectations play out with reality. He's obviously coached Josh Allen for a while. He's kind of at his peak. It's going to be a very make or break year next year for the Bills.
No, you're absolutely right that this is one of the harder jobs to take over, in that you have no time at all. It is, you get to the AFC Championship or Super Bowl, but even the AFC Championship, considering who they have, right, it doesn't feel like enough. If you don't reach the Super Bowl, you are totally a bust and a failure. And why did they hire that guy anyway? If you're a first round out and you lose your first ever playoff game, it is a gigantic, gigantic disappointment. I mean, that might have, I don't know if that scared some people off from the job, but I would have been nervous about that. Like, okay, the general manager just got the other coach fired who had all this success and probably isn't giving up too much roster control to me. And then if I do not win the Super Bowl, I'm like a laughing stock right away. So good luck to Joe Brady. It is worth mentioning that he was, I believe, fired from Carolina because they struggled so much offensively, but they did not have Josh Allen. So it is what
Who
it
knows?
is. Yeah.
Let's go down to another head coaching vacancy that was filled while I was gone. Mike McCarthy hired as the new Steelers head coach. And this really is a change from their typical way of doing things. The Steelers have this history of hiring the young new guy who, like we're saying, has been super offensive minded. And Mike McCarthy is 62. He's a Pittsburgh guy. He's from there, born and raised. And the big connection that everyone's making, and there's a big question mark here, is he was a head coach of Green Bay. He coached Aaron Rodgers for 13 seasons. Is this a ploy to bring Rodgers back? Is this bait to say, hey, Aaron, come back for one more year, and then we'll look at the 27 draft class. Maybe there's a better quarterback in there. I don't know, but it feels a little too on the nose right there.
I mean, if you talk about unpopular moves to make, this is as unpopular as it gets with Mike McCarthy. Because I think that what Steelers fans were looking for is sort of the next Mike Tomlin, but maybe on the offensive side of, hey, let's go find somebody who's younger that can find the next quarterback, kind of take down this roster, build up a new roster. Because when you look across, I mean, they are a veteran type of team. But if you don't have a quarterback that is long term, then you need to have a coach whose main job is to find your next quarterback. And now they're talking about developing Will Howard, which, color me maybe skeptical of that because you're talking about a guy who was not a high draft pick from Ohio State. So there's a lot of questions there. And I guess it's all right. So you guys are just going to try to run it back and win every year. But are you really going to build a strong enough team to truly compete? Now, it's not impossible, as we've seen from the Seattle Seahawks, who never tanked, but most teams have to reset their roster at some point, even if you don't go all the way to the bottom. How are they going to do that with, as you said, a 62-year-old coach who is, you know what it feels like? It feels like a better version of Pete Carroll showing up with the Raiders last year. Like, what their timeline and what they need to do doesn't really match up with the person that they hired. That said, I also think that McCarthy, I think it's some of it his personality and maybe his appearance. I don't know, a big burly football guy that nerds like to make fun of. I think he gets a little too much criticism sometimes. He
Yeah.
went to Dallas and won a heck of a lot of football games with Dak Prescott, had some elite offenses. Like, I think that he understands offense and can get the most out of a quarterback at times, but who is that quarterback going to be? And if Aaron Rodgers comes back there to play with Mike McCarthy and doesn't retire, I mean, do any of us think that that is going to work out? Like, if Burrow's back next year, if Lamar's back in Baltimore and healthy next year, does anyone think that's actually going to work? So you call some of these hires, man, you never really know, but questionable on their face. That's for sure.
The one of these three that I'm about to list that's not questionable, though, is Mike McDaniel, hired as the new Chargers offensive coordinator. This is the only one that I was researching that actually made sense to me. And one, I will say this man is chasing warm weather, and I really don't blame him for it because he has bounced from Miami over to LA. But as we all know, he's known for his offensive prowess. Like he's an offensive mastermind, and he just didn't have the tools, nor did he have the team culture or the locker room aspect under handle with Miami. And I think Justin Herbert still has a lot in the tank. So what do you make of this?
Yeah, I think so too. When you talk about good hires, now it's a weird fit with Jim Harbaugh in terms of their
Sure,
personality.
quirky. That's
Yeah,
quirky.
both of them. Like quirk level is 11 out of 10 for sure with both of these guys. But also both of them are very good historically at tying the run to the pass. So that's a good place to start. And I think what McDaniel represents is a little bit more modern version of that from what we saw with Greg Roman and Jim Harbaugh, as, using motions and using different formations and things like that, really to the advantage of the quarterback and getting open receivers downfield, which he did extremely well when they had Tyreek Hill, and then less so when they did not have Tyreek Hill. And when Tua was playing at a high level, he was very, very good under McDaniel. So I expect Justin Herbert to have an opportunity to take a jump next year. I mean, also getting his offensive lineman back is a big deal
Yeah.
for him. He had two elite tackles and then they were just gone. And that's pretty hard for just about anybody. So I think that McDaniel is a good hire for them. It also feels like something that could kind of implode between those two at some point. But if you're the Chargers, you have to roll the dice because Herbert's been really good for a long time and just cannot get past that first round of the postseason.
I will say the one thing that's making me giggle is thinking about those two personalities in a press conference. Man, the clips and the clip farming that we're about to get out of this LA Chargers team is going to be insane for the media side, which that's exciting to me. But you're right. I do think there's a potential for maybe, I don't even want to say butting heads, just like differences of opinion, maybe differences of doing things, the old and the new kind of coming together. But of the coaching hires I've seen, I feel like this is the most optimistic and creative hire, I will say, that really plays into his strengths. I don't think maybe hot take. I don't think Mike McDaniel is best suited for a head coaching job. I think he's best suited for an offensive coordinating job when he can focus on his one thing and freaking nail it. And when he gets that right, he doesn't have to worry about the million other things that a head coach has to worry about. He's just on a one track and he'll nail it.
Yeah, it's always interesting when it comes to that because I think that you're right about that, and I also think that those things sort of shift based on whether the team's winning or not. So
Sure.
his quirkiness when they were having a lot of success was like everybody loves him, A+ in the NFL Players Association grades, and then when they're not winning, it's the other way around. I did think there were some things that he did as a head coach or things that he said where I went, I don't think that's it, man. I mean, this is a pretty important and prominent position, and when you speak, it carries a lot of weight. So, are some of his actions like driving to a restaurant or something and yelling about the Bills after they beat them, whatever it was that he did there, like, all right, man, maybe that's not how you should be acting. So there's a little bit of that. I also wondered if is it a Jim Harbaugh move? Is it an ownership move because this is the hottest
Mm.
name and they're saying, "Sorry, Jim, this is the guy you got to work with and you better make it happen." So how that pairing works, but I think that on paper it looks really good for them.
Yeah, this is really a time will tell kind of deal. And then two more points on the coaching front before I move to the Super Bowl. Brian Dable is most likely, keyword, going to the Titans as offensive coordinator so long as he does not get hired as the Raiders head coach. That's an interesting position to be in.
I like it for them. I like Sala and Dable. Now, I don't know if Brian Dable is a genius or if it was just a bad situation in New York and he was in Buffalo and obviously Josh Allen was there taking his big next step under Brian Dable. But what I will say is that the world loves to tie together, well, this guy was working for this team and they weren't that great. So how could anyone ever hire him again? And I guess to me that's almost a not enough respect for how much rosters have to do with all of this. But if you're hiring somebody who's had some success with quarterbacks in the past, who's a fairly well respected coach in the league, then Dable and Sala there make sense to just try to get them back to any sort of respectability. They, as a franchise, are so far away from that that even if they were to get back on track to win 8 games or something and look like Cam Ward can play, then that would be a big victory for them next year. I think when it comes to Cam Ward, though, like the evaluation is still kind of tough. Like this might take 3 years to figure out because just like Trevor Lawrence in that year, he was working with Urban Meyer. Did he learn how to play in the NFL that year? Like this year, every time I saw Cam Ward, he was just running around being like, and sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't, right? So there's a lot of questions to be answered there, but I think it's probably the best they could have done, all things considered, with the reputation of that franchise right now.
Yeah, and again, it just feels a little strange to me that it's like a stipulation, like he's kind of getting looked at for both, but they both have a say in. I don't know. I'm just intrigued to see when Adam Schefter's going to blow up my phone with tweets saying like he's been taken for one of these two jobs. So as a Titans fan and as a Tennessean, I want him to go to the Titans. So fingers crossed for that one. But I will say the three teams still on the search for head coaching positions: the Browns, the Cardinals, and the Raiders. And I will say I'm not
Hmm.
shocked at all. Let's think about that one. Everyone put on your critical thinking hats. That makes a lot of sense, unfortunately, because they all don't have the best maybe culture or just like things keep leaking out about these different places or they have a reputation of not winning year after year after year after year. So it kind of makes sense.
You're being very Minnesota nice with your commentary about those 3 franchises. So I'll say it said. All 3 of them have been a trash fire. And the ownership of all 3 is extremely questionable. Jimmy Haslam and his involvement. And then, I mean, at least from what I read, Andrew Barry wanting his coaching candidates to write essays. I don't know if you saw that headline.
I did not see that. Are they in college?
Yeah. Dear Mr. Barry,
To who it may concern, please hire me and here is my CV attached.
right, right. What? I mean, very bizarre for a franchise with no answer at quarterback, no history of success whatsoever. And it looks like they're sort of up the river without a paddle trying to get the next head coach of this team. And what I'm always amazed by is They fire their current coach first, and then, hey, so who can we hire? Now, this is not dating where you break up with someone and then you're like, okay, I'll get the whatever app that I can meet someone new. This is not like that. You need to have an answer for who you have in mind, or at least candidates that you think would take the job. And it seems like these teams maybe didn't. And Arizona firing Jonathan Gannon, I mean, I guess I get it, but it looks pretty bad for Arizona when,
Yeah.
as soon as you fire a guy who, by the way, I'm going to just make a leap here and forced him to bench his quarterback so they could tank. So you ask him to do that. They're in a lot of games that it's a real struggle. Then you fire him and the Packers hire him and your offensive coordinator gets hired by the Lions. Well, what do those franchises have in common? They're good. So immediately the good teams are like, "Oh, okay, well, we'll take these good people that you have fired." So now what's your answer in Arizona? How are you getting a quarterback? At least the Raiders' job has the quarterback pretty settled. They're going to very, very likely draft Fernando Mendoza with the number 1 overall pick. If they do that, that makes it a lot more of an attractive job for someone like Brian Dable or whoever else they're going to get. So the Raiders are a little bit different for me.
Mm.
Their success recently, though, is clearly not been there. And the whole idea to hire a 70-something-year-old Pete Carroll for a rebuild season, it just never really added up. But luckily, I'm not the one paying the coaches not to work, because there's a lot of checks being sent to houses for people who are not working there.
My gosh. I'm just I'm just thinking about Hinge for head coaches. Like you're swiping, you're the Cardinals, and you're like, what qualities do I want in my head coach? What are the pros and cons? What's my two truths and a lie?
Right.
Anyway.
Is that what those apps do? I, I've had one girlfriend slash wife my entire life. So, and when we met, there was no such thing as the dating app.
That's
So
good.
here we are.
You missed nothing.
I missed nothing. Okay. Well, actually, that does sound a lot like what the Browns are doing for their thing. Send out a little questionnaire. It's very, very, very odd situation.
All right, let's jump from dating now to the next logical thing, the Super Bowl. We have a Super Bowl rematch on our hands and also the Mike Bowl. And I would like to say, please go back and listen to this episode and take a shot every time I say Mike, because every coach's name feels like is Mike this season. So,
Welcome to
February 8th.
football. Yeah, welcome to football.
football. Gosh. Um, this is going to be a good one. The Patriots versus the Seahawks. And I want to start with the Patriots, okay? 10-7 win over the Broncos, turned into a snowstorm. CBS was freaking out a little bit. People couldn't see. And all eyes are going to be now on Drake May. They have been as the season has been ramping up, but there's been all this kind of commentary around, oh, well, they had the easiest strength of schedule. He hasn't really been tested. Has he really shown what he's made of yet? And I don't think he's shown it yet. It's also what, his second season, and he's going to the Super Bowl. So I think there's a lot of expectation placed on his shoulders of he's going to be the one to carry this team. But it's not like he has bad people around him. And I wanted to hear your perspective on that, on the full team.
Yeah, I mean, he was certainly helped out a lot by weather, maybe more than anyone has ever been helped out in a playoff run, because it was not nice weather for the Los Angeles Chargers to come across the country and in a very long flight. And then it got much worse for the Houston Texans. So indoor teams from hot weather places going to play their defense. And then they go and play a backup quarterback in Jared Stidham, who was doing not the worst other than his chest passes. So if you're ever coaching little kids how to play basketball, you can use the Jared Stidham highlight, but he wasn't doing that badly. His coach makes probably a mistake not kicking a field goal, and then a snowstorm, which I guess that's the part of that second guessing of the field goals. Like, I don't know that Sean Payton knew there was a snowstorm on the way that was going to make it impossible to play football. Drake May runs the ball in the end zone one time after they get the ball inside the 20 and then wins, and he's going to the Super Bowl. And it really just speaks to me about how we judge quarterbacks on their playoff performances. And you go, Drake May has not played well in any of these games. I mean, he was good in the game against the Texans, but wasn't spectacular. And he's in the Super Bowl. And I think when you look at their route here, it is one of the easiest that anyone has had when it comes to their strength of schedule and so forth. That's fair. They are not the same team as the Seattle Seahawks, and that's pretty well reflected over on FanDuel. The spread right now, the Seahawks are 4.5 point favorites to win the Super Bowl, and I think that that's reasonable. That they are the better top to bottom team. And then May has now a mysterious shoulder injury that I'm sure won't get talked about at all through the next 2 weeks. I think that they are a deserving underdog. At the same time, he's great. The team is coached super well by Mike Vrabel. They had one of the best defensive performances in the playoffs that you're ever going to see, and they made it. And I don't want to hear this debate has been very odd about like the weather and all that. Like what this game's been around for how many years? It snows.
It's
What do you
part of it.
yeah, I wouldn't have maybe preferred that level of snow. I kind of like light snow globey snow rather than dudes can't stand up snow.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. It's an outdoor game. So, that's why you play for home field advantage is you usually hope to take advantage of stuff like that, but Denver was unable to do it.
And I know there's this whole drama about like, well, don't have all covered stadiums. Like this is part of the drama of football. These are grown men. We want to see them playing in all the weather. Listen, it's not that deep. Like I get both sides of it. I get like you get a dome stadium, you get a Super Bowl, you get to host events, you get a lot of other stuff in there, concerts and things. It's open, it's tougher. Yeah, it is pretty cool when they have to play in different climates and definitely home court advantage when you're the Packers and people have to come to you in the middle of winter. I get both sides, but like people are just focusing way too much on the wrong thing. What I do want to focus on from the Patriots side, though, is Mike Vrabel, because this is his first year with the Patriots. And he is in a rare club, which is his first season with the team, and he is potentially leading them to a Super Bowl. And I want to kind of look at the culture he's built and how he's done this. And I have to credit the athletic writer, Chad Graff. He did some incredible reporting on this. And I am just using what he has already put out there. So if you're looking for good articles, look no further than him. Mike Vrabel created this culture way back in OTAs. And instead of talking X's and O's, he instead had this room full of big dudes talk about the 4 H's, okay? Hopes, history, heroes, and heartbreak. That's what I imagine a bunch of dudes talking about for sure. But it created this culture of vulnerability and openness that like your head coach is sharing things. People were tearing up allegedly in the room. Like that's really powerful that your head coach sets that as like a day one standard.
There's more tiers, I think, in football than probably any other sport out there. And I think it just wouldn't be the same if it wasn't like this, if it wasn't so intense, if it wasn't so emotional, if they didn't build this incredibly tight, lifelong bond that the players do. And then when they finally win, it's just an explosion of emotions because of how hard it is and how much it means to them and how long they've worked for it and all those things. I mean, that's why we do this, right? If they were playing for a wooden spoon, and even though the game was fun, we wouldn't care. It's playing for the Lombardi Trophy, and I think that someone like Vrabel is such a great communicator. He is so. I mean, I've been around him only a little bit when they've been here for joint practices, but he has such a presence to him, and he is somebody that feels like you would never want to get on his bad side, but if if you do things the right way, he's going to have your back forever. And also, no fool getting Josh McDaniels back to be his offensive coordinator, somebody who is completely proven in this league. And, people probably forget it's not just Tom Brady. Also got to the playoffs with Mac Jones as his quarterback as well in 2021. So there's a lot of things there, putting the right people in the right situations, delegating, message to the team, command. It also helps that they had the rookie quarterback contract and spent a
Yeah.
butt ton of money on that roster. I wrote out after they got there, I wrote out all the free agents they signed, and it was like my fingers were tired by the time and then there was Diggs, and then Harold Landry, and then this guy I didn't know, but he's played well. Like it was they took full advantage of getting all the way to the bottom, drafting a starting left tackle, and then putting the money into their rebuild. So everything clicking there. And shout out to my friend Chad Graff, who used to cover the Minnesota Vikings. I am super happy for him, but I've also been sending him nasty messages for weeks because I'm just very jealous. I would like to be covering these games. So I've been like, I hate you, Chad. I just I
Dad,
just
I don't hate you. You
don't
do
ever
awesome reporting.
don't ever talk to me again, Chad. That's after this, we're done. We're absolutely done. We're done, but this was a great recap of what's going on. And also, I think there's still like 9 offensive coordinator jobs to be filled. And I don't know if there's enough people out there who know how to coordinate an offense. So we'll have more to talk about as we get closer. And then we'll have Super Bowl predictions to make and all sorts of things. So congratulations to you on your national media mention last week. I'm happy for you and proud you're making progress in your career. And we'll see if we can get you in PFT again next time. Thank you so much, Maggie.
Thank you. See you guys. Football.
Football.